Thank you for choosing to listen to this episode of the Alleluia podcast. This episode is part of our mental health awareness series and may contain topics that are sensitive or triggering. We believe that mental health and self-care are important for everyone. Now on to the podcast. You're listening to the Alleluia podcast, where faith and animation collide. Each episode will discuss the various topics in animated movies and TV shows, while also sharing our thoughts and opinions as they relate to faith and spirituality. Get ready to raise a hallelujah. It's time for Alleluia.
And my name is Josh, and you're locked into another episode of the Alleluia podcast, and I'm with my lovely wife, Rebecca.
Hey guys.
So I want to get right into it. Generally, with our beginning of the show, we kind of do some funny banter, make a few jokes, and it's all fun and great. However, I do want to set the tone for this episode. To say that this one will be heavy is an understatement.
Yeah, this one was a really, really emotional roller coaster.
Yes, agreed. And we had the warning before the intro that you heard, but I do want to extend an additional warning to those of you listening. This episode is going to deal with the topic of suicide, depression, and anxiety, especially suicide. We know that can be very triggering for some people. So just putting that disclaimer out there that if you are easily triggered by suicide, toxic depression, or anything like that, please be advised.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to make sure too that, if you are dealing with suicidal thoughts, with depression, or really any mental illness that we'll be talking about for the whole month, we definitely want to encourage you to seek professional help.
Yes.
Don't be afraid. I know in society there can be this stigma against going to a counselor, that you're somehow wrong, or that you're sick, or that you're, just all of sort of like negative connotations that come with going to a therapist. But, we heard it once, I think we may have said this last week, but I heard it one time that your body gets sick, right? You get a cold, you cut your finger, whatever it is, you go to see a doctor for that injury, a bodily injury, to get that healed and resolved. And sometimes our mind and our emotions and our soul gets hurt, and we just need a doctor for our soul and for our mind.
And there's tons of resources. Again, if you're having suicidal thoughts or suicidal tendencies, there's the suicide hotline, the Hope Line, which is great. Groundwire is another great resource. That's all biblical and faith-based. And for those of you listening who may not be of a particular religious persuasion, there's counselors out there that will cater to
whatever your needs are and specialties are.
Yes. So without further delay, we're going to go ahead and get into our film for this week, and that is A Silent Voice. This movie came out in 2017, and I'll read you a little bit of a synopsis. A young man is ostracized by his classmates after he bullies a deaf girl to the point where she moves away. Years later, he sets off on a path for redemption.
Oh, wow. That is a really good synopsis of what it's about. I didn't even think about the theme of redemption in the story, but that's absolutely one of the major themes in the story.
And definitely something that we'll touch on here as we discuss this movie. As I said in the beginning, this is very much an emotional roller coaster. It has a nice blend of humor, but also very serious through the majority of this film. I wouldn't recommend it for children under the age of 14, maybe, because your aunt, we were talking with her, and she said that her son watched it, or they all watched it together.
Yeah, well, I mean, and for that matter, though, this is dealing with, it is heavy, but I think middle schoolers, I mean, they need to know some of this stuff, I guess. I don't know, I go back and forth on the whole idea of like shielding our children. I think if we talked about some of these issues more and kind of normalized these things as far as like talking about it, there would be more help available, and that kids in particular wouldn't feel alone. Because when you go through something that's emotionally traumatic like that, you end up feeling like you're alone. And that's something that Satan tries to do when we have all of these emotions going on inside of us that we don't know what the root cause is, we don't know how to deal with it, all of that. He tries to tell us that, well, you're completely alone. No one will ever believe you, or you are the only one who feels this way, basically.
And that's when the other conditions start to play in, the depression, the anxiety, and just everything that comes along with, self-harm and, suicidal thoughts. And again, it doesn't go straight to, oh, I'm going to cut myself or whatever. It starts with, those thoughts of before the action of, Rebecca, what you said, hey, I'm feeling alone. I am the only one and nobody else is going to understand. And even if I told them, they think I was lying.
Yeah. Yeah. Or think that I'm blowing this out of proportion.
Right. And the sad thing is, I've heard stories from people where they tell their parents and they're like, oh, it's just a phase, or, oh, you're just doing it for attention.
That is so harmful. I don't think parents say those things with bad intentions, but it is not helpful. In fact, it is harmful. And I think it's because they themselves haven't been educated on mental health and mental illnesses and how to give proper treatment, basically. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about doing this Mental Health Awareness Month.
And just to preface this episode in particular, I know we started pretty light at the start. Don't worry, this will probably be the heaviest one that we do.
Yeah, we went from joy and sadness, going on a little journey, in last week, and now we're jumping right into Silent Voice, which there was another name, wasn't there, when it was like directly translated from Japanese?
Right. So in the beginning and at the end of the film, it says like
a quiet voice or something.
Yeah, a quiet voice or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, this movie is an Japanese anime film that came out.
And at the time of this recording, it is available on Netflix. So for those of you who subscribe to Netflix, it is available at the time that we're recording this. And we own it. I purchased it on like Apple iTunes or whatever.
Yeah. When we saw it, it was like, whoa, this was a journey. You felt everything that Shoya went through.
So getting into the film itself, it encompasses a lot in 2 hours.
Yeah, it does. Oh my gosh. We start off in Shoya, the main guy. He is in elementary school with all of his friends, and he really just wants to like fit in.
Correct. And so they're in like elementary school, and you're at that point where you just playing around but bullying. And again, I can speak from experience, just because you're different or you speak a certain way or you walk a certain way, anything that's different or not the norm is automatically attacked.
By the majority of people, I would say that that's true. There are some kids who I know I experienced in my school. They were very kind and open to people who were different. And that was a great way to grow up, I guess, with classmates that were like that. I bet there were probably people who were uncomfortable, but there were a lot of really nice kids. But I know my school experience is not the same. And that was only from my perspective. I didn't see everyone's perspective, obviously. Did you experience or see any bullying happening in your school?
This was before the whole curbing the bully initiative was really going on. because, like I was saying, if you showed any shred of like uniqueness or something that's seen as weird, you were kind of like ostracized by a certain group.
Yeah. Yeah. And while you were talking, I actually remembered, I've totally forgotten about this. I actually had a bully in school. Yeah, this was in third grade. Yeah, third grade. It was in third grade. And I was the new kid at school. And I just remember, I remember it was a girl and like her group of friends. And one thing in particular that stood out, she had like one of those very 90s or early 2000s fluffy shirts, fuzzy, fluffy shirts. And she was like, oh yeah, you want to feel? To all of her friends. And they were like, oh my gosh, it's so soft. And then I remember coming in with my stuff and she was like, well, everyone can feel except you, Rebecca. You can't feel it. I was like, okay.
To which you said, I don't want to feel it anyway.
Well, at the time, I was obviously very hurt. I don't even remember all the other stuff that happened, honestly, with that particular person. I do remember, though, that my dad would take me golfing and he told me to visualize this person's head as the golf ball. And I would smack that ball almost all the way to the green. And that was good therapy. Maybe not the healthiest thing to do. My mom would come in and she would say, now we should pray for her and we should give her, our church was like giving out one of the like Christmas CDs or something at the time. And she was like, we should pray for her and give her a CD. And there was like a Christian CD. And
while that's all well and good, some of us are not going to go directly to that. Some of us will be like, well, the only thing that this person will, understand is a swift kick.
Well, yeah, my parents were pretty good. We got the praying thing in. Let's talk it out. What happened? Let's pray for her because this is something that, something she may be dealing with that, it may have nothing to do with you. But then also practically, let's get some therapy out of this hitting a golf ball business. And I think maybe that something that was going on with me at the time that's very similar to Shoya is that I know I just really wanted to fit in. I got my worth, and for a long time, I still fall into this, get my worth from other people and their acceptance. And Shoya.
Yeah, it's very easy to do.
So easy.
Because we want to fit in, whether that's with a group at school or a club or even a clique at work or something like that. Again, we feed off that acceptance. Like me, I'm kind of the resident meme funny guy on my team at work, and I kind of find that builds up my confidence because I'm like, okay, people are laughing, they think it's funny, and that's great. So that's kind of like my identity at work.
Well, and it's good. I don't think it's a bad thing to do things that boost your confidence, because that's a very positive thing. You boost your confidence. That's good. I also think it's really good to be rooted in your identity in Christ, because without being rooted there, all of the confidence building things that you end up doing kind of hurt you because it forces or reinforces your need for acceptance from others. But I don't think it's a bad thing,
Not at all.
Oh, good.
So with all this talk of bullying, what we've kind of described is the first 15, 20 minutes of a silent voice. We have the character of Shoko. Yeah.
She's the deaf girl.
Yeah. So we have the character of Shoko.
Shoko. I know, it's hard. Shoko and Shoya.
Shoko. We have the character of Shoko, who comes into the school and she's a new student, and she brings out this notebook explaining, hey, I'm deaf, I can't hear. I use this notebook. If you want to talk to me, please use this notebook.
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of like put off a bit, and Shoya doesn't really I guess, kind of like understand. She's kind of like, whatever, like
Yeah,
for a little bit.
He was very whatever. He didn't understand it. He didn't, none of that. It was only when he started to see other people in his friend group be mean to her that he decided he was going to be the class clown and make fun of her.
Yeah, so Naoka is one of his friends, and she's the first person to kind of put off Shoko. Hey, don't talk to me, or I don't really want to be around you, stuff like that. And Shoko, just being like the sweetest person, is just
Oh my gosh,
wanting friend. She reminded me a lot of like Toru from Fruits Basket.
Yeah. Yes, very similar to Toru.
And I'll play a clip here, but this is where Shoya and Shoko are having this exchange in elementary school where Shoya is just telling Shoko, hey, we're all kind of like sick of this. Why do you have to be like so different?
You know something? We're all sick of you and your notebook. It's getting pretty old pretty fast. What do you want?
Can we be friends?
What? You're such a freak!
Man, thinking about that now, you know how you can see sounds?
Yeah, I think he was also kind of frustrated with himself that he couldn't understand her.
Quite possibly. And even after being bullied and just time and time again, she still makes that attempt to connect with people.
Yeah, she is resilient. That is for sure. And, she had to obviously learn that at a very young age that people were not going to be as accepting of her, which is really sad. She has a physical impairment of not being able to hear, but she's able to have hearing aids. That was hard to watch too. He decided.
Yeah, to just grab her hearing aids
and rip them out.
Yeah, and that is very damaging. Don't ever do that.
Right. Well, and you could see too, she was bleeding when he did that. And those things are expensive.
Yeah. And he didn't rip them out constantly, but that one time he did. But more so is taking them out of her ear and just throwing them or trashing them. Mm-hmm. And in the film, those things are expensive. Though they are not cheap, and they have to replace them time and time again.
Yeah, it was.
This is kind of where everything kind of takes a turn after all this bullying, because it comes to the point where Shoko's mother is now notified of the bullying, and she sees the scars of what's happening. And, the principal comes in and says, I need, for anybody, I need you to speak up and come forward if you have seen any bullying.
Yeah, he was very serious, as he should have been.
Yeah. And Shoya, he's just outed instantly.
Shoya, stand up. We all know that it's you. I told you, stand up!
Yes, sir.
Now then, Naoka, you sit right next to him. What have you seen?
Well, it's kinda true. He does tease her a little. He makes fun of her.
What?
And Kazuki?
Yeah, totally. I kept telling him to knock it off, but Shoya won't listen to anyone.
What? Wait, that's not fair. You were making fun of her too, Kazuki. And it's not just the boys. The girls were doing it too.
Trying to kind of lump everybody in and say, well, it wasn't just me, everybody else's, but you were the constant force in that.
Well, so yeah, there's two things going on here. Both of them are right, I think, because he was the main instigator in a lot of the bullying, but the other kids didn't stop him, and they were making fun of her too. What he said, what Shoya said is true. And they were trying to be like, what? Me? I could never. I'm so innocent. I don't want to get in trouble. It was just because they didn't want to get in trouble. And then his friends, like we just heard, they completely turned on him. completely turned on him. And then they started bullying him since they needed a new target to bully.
Yeah, I mean, kick them while they're down, as the saying goes.
Yeah. And that was hard. That was hard to watch because Shoya was wrong. He was wrong. And the world would say, well, he kind of deserved the punishment in a way to know how it feels to be bullied. And just out of a human, the human part of me says, yeah, well, he, not that he deserved it, but like he needed to learn a lesson. That was not the right way to learn that lesson.
I mean, two wrongs don't make a right.
Exactly. But yeah, that was really hard. And yeah, and those kids who were his friends, they were in the wrong too. They were in the wrong all the time. But Shoya was the one who ultimately was left with some serious mental health issues.
As we see when we fast forward, I guess like 8-10 years later.
No, I don't think it was that long because this was supposed to be in elementary school, right?
Right.
And then apparently he's in middle school now, which I think
it's
whoever like translates these things, I don't think that that's true. I think
really, I thought it was high school.
I thought it was high school too. Well, he may have been the last year of middle school, which in American society is freshman year of high school. So maybe that's what it is. Or maybe someone just like didn't quite get the translation because he looks very grown all of a sudden. So I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like when we were talking, when we were watching Tokyo Revengers. It's like, yeah, these people are in middle school. I'm like, there's no way.
There's no way. These guys are powerhouses of just muscle and strength. Yeah, there's no way they're just in middle school. I mean, I know middle school kids are like a lot bigger than you think they are, but they seem like they were high school.
Yes. So we'll kind of fast forward into the movie where we get into that real depression and anxiety phase because Shoya's friends have now turned on him and he gets bullied and he becomes reclusive, not wanting to look anybody in the eye, head down, kind of blocking everything out, just going about his day. And then at some point, he wants to make amends to people he's wronged or people he's caused trouble for, like his mother.
Well, because he gets to the point where he's told himself so many times, I am a piece of trash. I do not deserve to live. I don't deserve happiness because of what I did to this girl. And he's carrying a heavy, heavy burden of shame and guilt. Guilt that is, it's good that he feels guilt for what he did. The problem is he never moved past that. He wasn't able to process those emotions. He wasn't able to process those emotions and move forward in his life. And he was never able to forgive himself. And so he thought, well, I might as well make things right with my mom and things right with Shoko if I can find her. And then he was going to end his life.
And Shoko is kind of like, yes, it is a thought in his mind, but before he runs into her, he doesn't know if she's like just down the road or she's like in another city.
Well, I think he knows where she goes to school. He found that out because he goes directly to her school, right? When he first goes to see her?
Well, he bumps into her at school and then he goes to see her afterwards. Because this is all before like him wanting to like end his life. And I thought
the sequence of events were a little different. I mean, it doesn't really matter. He goes when he has made the decision to end his life, before he actually did it, he was going to go give her the notebook that she used to write in. That was his whole goal. I think he was just going to go give it to her and then commit suicide.
But then that interaction happens that,
right.
Do you want to be friends?
Right.
Something in his brain is like making a last ditch effort to kind of salvage whatever there is.
I don't think he really wanted to kill himself. I think there was, a piece a piece of him that he was hurting so much, and he didn't know how to process that. And, you know, the taking himself out of the picture was the only way that he could see until he talked with Shoko again and realized that maybe he could truly make amends with Shoko.
Yeah, now that I'm remembering, I think that was like the correct sequence. Just trying to like make it all make sense. But in terms of making amends, he gives his mother the money that she had to spend to replace Shoko's hearing aids. And
Which is a lot of money.
yes, but he left clues that kind of like, you know, hinted at what he was going to do. And the mother says, oh, you know, I had such a nice son, you know, giving me, you know, money that he's paying me back for, and just being, you know, such a great role model. But why is your calendar? Why is there nothing after the 15th? Why have you canceled like your phone plan?
Yep.
And I'll play a little bit of something from there. Again, I've got a lot of audio to kind of like give you all context.
Yeah, don't do anything crazy, Mom.
Crazy? You were gonna off yourself!
No, wait! I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry. I won't do it again. I swear I won't. Please don't burn it!
What are you not gonna do? Be specific!
I promise I'm not going to kill myself. I swear I won't do it. Please, believe me.
Do you mean it?
I mean, to be a parent in that situation, I mean, do you really believe that just because they say, I'm not going to do it, that they won't? Because having suicidal tendencies and thoughts is just not a light switch that you can turn off.
I would say for some people it is. That was my experience. I had planned to talk about this since we are talking about depression and suicide. But when I was in my sophomore year of high school, actually my freshman year of high school and all the time up to that, I was a very happy, positive individual. And it was like life was great, bad things happen, but, you know, I'll get through it kind of a thing. And then it sounds silly when I say it now, but this was my experience. There was a guy at school who I misread his intentions, and he was just being really nice, and I thought he liked me. So I kind of convinced myself that I really liked him. And once you turn those feelings on, it's hard to turn them off. And so one day I asked him about it. Do you like me? And he was like, I'm really sorry, but I don't. I was like, okay. I have no idea how that conversation ended. I have no idea, but I know that launched me into a year of deep depression, a depressive state, I would say. I don't think it was clinical depression, but
was it that you just felt up all those emotions and that rejection just really took a toll?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was pretty serious, actually. I didn't really tell anyone because of the things that we talked about just a little bit ago about feeling alone. Like I was the only one in the world who's ever felt this darkness, this depression. And there's actually a really good video on YouTube called, I think I Have a Black Dog Named Depression, or Black Dog Named Depression, something like that. It was put out by the World Health Organization several years ago. And it talks about what depression actually is, what it feels like, and it's true. It's all consuming, and it really pulls you down in every single aspect. I do not remember ever being happy, truly happy during that year of my life. And it was really hard. It was really hard. I ended up having suicidal thoughts and very, very negative thought life. It was really, really bad, much like Shoya. And as we find out a little later, Shoko also has these feelings and thoughts of being a burden to others, that no one would really miss me if I was gone because no one really loved me, which is a total lie from the enemy.
It's one of the biggest lies.
Yeah.
Just to get you to that point, to just take yourself out.
Yeah.
And in our heart of hearts, we know that's not true. We know that we were put here for a reason. We have family, we have people that care about us. And if you just take yourself out, that's not only affecting you, that's affecting everybody in your close circle around you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember at that time, I never could get to the place where I had lots of thoughts of self-harm. But I could never get to the place where I actually hurt myself. And I'm so thankful for that it didn't go that far. But I had friends who did go that far. And I remember being so worried and concerned for them. And, you know, it's so odd that I would have that compassion for my friends, and yet I would have the thought life secretly of that no one cared about me. It didn't make sense. I remember during that time too, I heard a lot of my friends saying that suicide was the coward's way out of a difficult situation. And I remember agreeing with that.
I mean, that's a bit harsh when I hear it, because I don't believe that people think they're being a coward when they're choosing to take their own life. They think they're doing the world a quote unquote favor or a service.
They do.
When it's actually a disservice in reality.
Right. Yeah. After going through what I did with my very, very poor mental health, I definitely don't agree with that statement. It is, in fact, very harmful. And I know now, you know the Bible verse, I believe it's in Romans. I should know it. I should memorize it by now. But where it's talking about, I know it's in Genesis, but it's also quoted in Romans. So the story of Joseph is where it comes from. But Joseph is telling his brothers, once they've kind of reunited and made up, he was telling them, hey, don't worry about what you did to me. Like, I forgive you. And he says, what you meant for evil, God took and meant for good. And I really hung on to that afterwards. And even now, that what Satan meant for evil, to take me down, to take me out, to crush my spirit, God took and has now used it for good, for his glory, because I can tell people, I know what you're going through. I truly understand and can communicate what it's like to go through that to other people who haven't. And it's a big part of my story and my drive for why I wanted to do this Mental Health Awareness Month, and why, a lot of things. But how I ended up moving through that time in my life was, I remember very clearly having a conversation with my mom. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but the outcome of that conversation was, I don't like who I am. I don't like wearing black all the time. I don't like my attitude. I don't like this person. And I made a decision right then and there that I was going to change, and that I was going to move forward in a different way, and I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. And I think in that moment, for me, not for everyone who deals with depression, and particularly for clinical depression, that's different. It was like God just removed that nasty little demon that was speaking lies to me. And it was like I was able to see clearly again. Now, it took a long time to work through my emotions that dealt with the whole period of time in my life. But through spending time with my friends and that, funny enough, that guy that I was telling you about just a minute ago, kind of, I hate to say started all of it, because like it wasn't his fault, and I don't want any blame to be on him, because it was all stuff to do with me. But we stayed friends the whole time. We actually went to prom together. So that was interesting. But it took me a long, long time to process all of that. And that was a very long story. But I
No,
hope,
an important story and perfectly illustrates kind of like, what we're talking about.
yeah, I hope that gives insight into what goes on in people's heads when they're dealing with depression and dealing with things like our characters here are dealing with. Obviously, I don't want to discount my experience, but like what our characters here in the story dealt with was serious. Like bullying, disabilities are involved. Like that is really heavy. But the emotions that come from whatever life circumstances there are is the same, So it doesn't matter, I guess, what your circumstances that kind of launched or kicked off the depressive state, your story is valid too. Whatever your story is. And just because someone else has something that seems worse, I guess, like has a worse story than whatever you're going through, don't discount your own story, because that's important too.
Yeah, just to reiterate what you said, let's say that you had suicidal tendencies and thoughts, but you never actually, went through with it, as opposed to somebody who did. That doesn't discount your experience or your feelings or your thoughts. Those are all valid. It's just to a different degree.
Well, yes. The degree of pain, though, I think very much can be the same, because when I now hear of someone who has gone through with their plans of suicide, I know that only happened because on that particular day, they lost the battle that was raging inside of them. And that's what it feels like every single day when you're going through depression and suicidal thoughts. It is a battle within your mind to get control of the suicidal thoughts and the self-harm thoughts and all of that. And I just get so emotional when I hear about, people who have actually gone through with committing suicide, and it means that they lost the battle. That's really sad. It was a bad day,
Completely agree with that. To get theological a little bit with the quote unquote eternal ramifications of that, I've heard different things, but Rebecca, I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that a person who commits suicide, are they separated for eternity from God?
I guess you could call suicide murder of yourself. But that's just like every other sin. Jesus has covered that sin. He's covered it. Not just covered it, actually. It has been atoned for. 100% gone. Not just covered. And the only thing that separates us from God is if we do not have Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. And Holy Spirit doesn't reside in us and made us a new creation, which all happens at the same time, by the way. People like to separate it out, but I think it all happens at the same time. That's the only thing that would ever separate us.
Those are my thoughts too. I've just heard different viewpoints of, is somebody commits suicide, that totally blows everything else out of the water, whether you accepted Jesus or not. You have a place in the barbecue, I'll call it.
Well, it's a kind of a funny way to say that. Not really.
Again, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just,
Yeah.
They basically, people think you'll go to hell if you commit suicide.
I think the Catholic Church, at least they used to prescribe to that. I don't know if they still do. But yeah, I've heard that if you commit suicide.
I think the idea behind it may be salvation is a gift. Life is also a gift. If you refuse, or if you commit suicide, you're basically making a refusal of that gift of life, and therefore making a refusal of that gift of salvation. Again, if you're not a Christian, I think it's kind of their thinking of like, well, you go to hell if you do that.
I mean, when you explain it like that, if that's the thinking, I can see how you would come to that conclusion. It's still incorrect, but I can see how you would get to that. Yeah, I heard whenever this was, I don't know. I heard the story of who was it? There was it was a serial killer, Ted Bundy, I think. Someone like that who at the end of his life in jail or wherever he was awaiting his death sentence, he accepted Christ, and that rubbed some people the wrong way because he did awful thing. But if he indeed became a Christian and he accepted Jesus into his life as his Lord and Savior, then he will be in heaven, and he has been forgiven. And that's hard to deal with. And on this idea of forgiveness, Shoya believes that he is unforgivable, right? What he did was unforgivable
because of what he's done. And but on his path of redemption, forgiveness is a very vital part of that I don't think you fully grasp, because he's trying to get forgiveness from his mom, from Shoko especially, but all these other people around him as well.
Yeah, it is like you read in the beginning of the little synopsis of the story where it said it's a story of redemption. That's exactly right, because he goes to redeem these relationships, if you will, with his mom and with Shoko. And there's a girl who was in his middle school or in his elementary school class who's now in his middle or high school, whatever class they're in. And when he starts to connect with these people, and he made a friend, the other kid who was like a loner. I don't remember his name, but
Tomochiro. Oh no, hold on. Tomohiro.
Yeah, so he first makes friends with Tomohiro, who needs a friend. He was like, we're going to be friends. And
he's like seriously from like day one.
Oh yeah, I love how Shoyo when they first go to hang out, and they're at this restaurant, and he was like, Tomohiro, how do people become friends? Like, how does that work? And he was like, all right, let me tell you.
Turns in the whole Godfather thing, dips his fry in the ketchup like a cigarette.
Yes. And he's like, just like this. And he takes his hand and he does a little like handshake thing. And he's like, now we're friends. And that's it.
Yeah.
And it's so simple.
And he says something to the effect of, friendship lies beyond words and material.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, Shoya needed to learn how to be a good friend, and Tomohiro helps him to do that. And then he kind of starts to bring other people in. And something that I love about this movie is that there's a visual representation of how Shoya sees people.
Yes, that's one thing I want to kind of jump on.
Yeah.
So how Shoya sees people, or doesn't see, because of his anxiety and depression, not looking people in the eye, you can see the visual representation. What he sees is he doesn't see people's faces. Everybody's face is like X'd out or kind of like
blurry
or blurred out. Yeah. And it's not until he like looks in the eye and makes a connection with them,
right,
that X falls off.
It's like he finally acknowledges them as a person.
Right. And that's exactly what happens with Tomohiro, where Miss Foley is trying to, take Tomohiro's bike, and Shoya's like, well, I mean, why not take my bike?
Oh yeah, I forgot about the bike thing.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, over here. He's like, wow, I'm glad I ran into you. So, well, how did you know where I lived? It's like, your address was on the bike. He's like, I'm glad I found it, and I found you too. Yeah. And that's when the first X falls off.
Yeah, because he started to make a connection.
And then they go to the movies and the mall, and he's like, oh, Shoya, over here. He's like, I sent you a seat. He's like, you're the only two in the theater.
Yep.
I will say the animation wonderful in this film. Just all the detail.
Yeah, it is really good. They did a really good job.
The score of the music in this film is also really good as well.
Yes,
It
I would
perfectly
agree.
illustrates all the emotions that are being felt. And
Man, yeah, without the music enhances your emotional experience, that's for sure. Yeah,
There-
I went from like laughing with whatever jokes they were doing to all of a sudden just like weeping. Like at one point I looked over at you when we were watching this and I was like, "Can I have a tissue?" And they were all gone because you had been sick a little earlier. And I was like, "You used them all." And so you went to the bathroom and got some toilet paper for me.
There are actually other tissues upstairs. I just didn't think about it.
Well, that's okay.
But speaking of the emotion and like the music, I'll play a bit of the extended clip. This is where Shoka is attempting.
Shoko?
Sorry, I don't know why. I'm trying to mix
They're
the two.
very close in the names. Shoko, Shoya. Yeah.
So this is the scene where Shoko is going to attempt suicide, and this is during the fireworks. She's got it all planned out. It's loud. Nobody will hear anything. And Shoya kind of comes in and kind of like listen to the music in this because the tempo, the everything just comes together.
What is she? Hey, wait a second. What is she doing? Hey, Shoko? Shoko? Don't do it! Please, no. Shoko!
That scene probably has my heart pounding anytime I see it. Like I know the outcome, but still the tension, and you can see that it's getting closer and closer to that climax. The tempo's getting faster, and
Well, he's like, what is she doing? Oh my gosh, wait, this is bad. Something is very bad. And he tries to go and run after her. And then he runs into the table. I'm like, oh my gosh, come on, man.
and
you
it tries
gotta
to
go.
yell out for it. It's like, oh,
She can't hear. Oh, I know it. That scene really, that was hard. And he ends up, well, if you haven't watched it, you gotta watch it.
Well, there's a spoiler. She doesn't succeed.
Yes. Yeah. She does not succeed in committing suicide.
Which, I mean, I probably would just said, okay, I'm done. If she's gone, there's no point.
Oh, for him to continue.
Right.
Yeah. And she ultimately decided to do that because she thought that she was causing people too much trouble.
Right. And that gets into like the psyche and the mental state of those who are dealing with these thoughts. Like, it's my fault. Everybody would be better if I was just out of the picture. And again, more lives from the enemy. And this is the last one of the last sound clips I'll play from this. But we see this in Shoko's perspective, where Shoya is just getting out of the hospital due to the events that transpired after the unsuccessful suicide. And yeah, I'll let this speak for itself.
No! You're wrong! It's because I couldn't change! And that's why you fell! It's me! Everything is always my fault! So I thought I should just disappear. I was so selfish! I'm sorry!
Please, that's not true. Don't cry.
Even now, it's hard to listen to that. And it's also, I feel, for the person trying to console, it can be very difficult to console somebody who's dealing with that. Like, you can provide words of affirmation, encouragement. I am not sure how I would do it if put in that situation.
So that video I was talking about earlier, I have a black dog and his name is Depression.
Yes.
So there's a follow-up video that was made, and I'm so glad they made it because that video really focused on what is depression, what is it like to have depression, but there's a follow-up video called Living with the Black Dog, and that gives really good tips on how to communicate with someone who has depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and, all of that, and what to do and what not to do. And it's excellent. I highly recommend, again, put out by the WHO.
Absolutely. Well, kind of wrapping things up here, we've discussed bullying. Becca has shared her own personal struggle with self-harm, suicidal thoughts. And I want to stress again, if you are dealing with any of this, there's resources out there. Talk to a counselor, pastor, family. There are people who will listen and not just blow it off as some, need for attention or anything like that.
And if you do run into those people, have compassion on them because they don't know what it's like and they just don't understand. So I encourage you to find those people who will understand because they do exist. And you'll never know how someone's going to react unless you actually do it, And I think, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about God's plumb line. Is that right?
We did. We discussed it. We discussed it during Aladdin and Inside Out. So it's brought up both times.
Got it. That is a fabulous tool. A fabulous tool to use when you're having negative thoughts like that. Don't let that be the only help that you seek, but it can be a tool to use. Because sometimes you may actually be going through clinical depression, or you just need more support than one particular tool can provide. So definitely seek professional help on that. And that goes for anything. If you're dealing with anxiety, my personal views on this too, for depression, anxiety, all of that, there are prescription drugs that are available to help with these situations. From my research and perspective, those can be more harmful than helpful. Do your research though, seek professional help. I personally am weary of leaning heavily on those drugs. That's getting into advice that I really don't want to jump into that area because that's so dangerous.
And this is all just our opinion,
right?
With the knowledge.
This is not medical advice.
Right. We're not licensed counselors or anything. We are just
one
day. One day.
Not yet.
But for the moment, we're just two individuals just giving our opinion, and you do that what you wish. But as we've said, seek professional help, counselor, people who are licensed and trained in this field to give you the tools that you need to help.
Absolutely.
And we'll just kind of get into our recommendation with this. Again, great, impactful film, music, animation, great storyline. Again, heavy, but I would encourage anybody, who has a love for anime, basically, and also just great story and that deals with hard topics. I would definitely recommend this.
Yeah, I would say particularly if you've got teenage kids, or you are a teenager, I would say this is a good one to watch. Or really any adult, because it's helpful. And this stuff can come back in your life, because I didn't just deal with that one episode of depression. My parents actually got a divorce right as I was when I graduated high school and going into college. And this is true for so many freshmen at college. They deal with a lot of depression and anxiety. A lot of kids do. And so this stuff can come back. You can, it can go in and out. And
for a lot of people, it's a daily struggle.
Yeah. Sometimes it's worse than others. And exactly.
Well, we know this was a very heavy episode. Congratulations if you've made it to the end. We promise the rest of the month will be a little bit on the lighter side. We have...
Well, mental health is serious in general.
It is serious. We try to have a good balance, but we want to stress the importance and the seriousness of this topic by, paving the way as we did in the beginning.
Yeah. And, before we really wrap up here, I think it's really important to say, kind of like we did for last week's episode in Inside Out, there's this, it's very pervasive idea throughout Christian culture. And I know with Carly, we talked about it being, it's not just Christian culture, it's like all of culture. But I know in particular for Christianity, we have this idea that we must be happy all the time. And if we're not happy all the time,
then we're doing something wrong.
Yes. And that we are not good Christians, that we don't love God enough, or whatever else it is. Or, we could even say, if we are dealing with depression and poor mental health, then we are wrong. Something is wrong with us, and that we are that God doesn't love us, or whatever it is that kind of goes into that. And that is just not true. It's just not. I've said it before on the podcast here, but emotions are neither negative or positive. They're kind of neutral, but they tell a deeper story of what's going on. And that's why talking to someone is so important, I think.
Well, before we actually wrap up, we're going to do one thing we liked about the movie and one thing that we did not like. And with this, there's not a lot to not like about it. One thing I'll say is I loved the whole imagery and the illustration, as we spoke about earlier, with how Shoya sees people when he's not interacting or looking them in the eye, making a connection. So I really love that illustration, and just how well it communicated emotion. Honestly, I don't have anything that I did not like. Well, okay, I did not like Nyoka because she was just looking for a chance to be Shoko down, like, at any given point. So from the character perspective, that's one thing I did not like.
Yeah, her character was hard to relate to because she was so negative, and she was just like, she just couldn't understand. She was very self-centered, and it was hard to get behind her and root for her as a character. Like, come on, girl, get with the picture. Don't you understand? I don't know. I think in the end, she kind of started to understand, or at least be somewhat okay. I don't know. She didn't have a lot of positive character development. I would say that's probably true. That's probably the thing that I liked the least as well. But I mean, it does illustrate there are some people who are like that, and they're just not going to change. My favorite thing about the movie, in a similar way to what you said, about the X's on the face. My favorite part though of the movie was at the very end when he finally starts to listen to what people are actually saying. Because this whole time he's been thinking, they hate me, I'm terrible, I'm awful. And he projects his own negative self-talk onto other people. Like, they're doing the self-talk, or they're saying those negative things about him. And it's not true, I mean, like, they don't really care, particularly when they're at the like fireworks thing or festival or wherever they are. And he finally starts to look people in the eye, and all of those X's fall off of their faces.
That scene is
so impactful.
I shed a tear each time. And the music, when all the X's are just falling off of the faces, that's enough to watch the movie alone.
Yeah, because it's like the build up to that moment is incredible. Because you realize something has now changed in Shoya, and he will be okay because he's opened himself up to, a close group of people, and then he was okay with other people as well.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and end the episode. and we will see you all next week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Analuia podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to keep up with all the latest information. We would love to hear your comments and questions about today's episode, as well as suggestions for future episodes. You can message us on our socials or email us at contact@analuia.com.